As a reminder, the meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the county's YouTube channel in the near future. Since the last time we had a public meeting here, there have been a few times where the commissioners have been together, one of which was an executive session. On the 7th, Commissioner Eggleston and I were together to hear a constituent complaint. On the 11th was the executive session where Attorney Shreve was giving us legal counsel pertaining to an insurance agreement, which is not on the agenda, and I don't believe we're going to be voting on any in the near future. Also on the 11th, Commissioner Eggleston and I were in the room together to hear another constituent complaint related to the Don Mills Achievement Center and difficulties they've been having with the state. And on the 13th, today, Commissioner Eggleston and I were really serving more as Rouse board members, not so much county commissioners, in a meeting with Northwest PA. Yeah. So those are the meetings. Do either of you have anything more to raise? Okay. I'm not aware of any correspondence that has come before us since the last meeting. It's worth bringing to the public eye. Do either of you have anything to raise? All right. Hearing nothing, I will move on to public comment. This time, if there is anyone here who would like to address the commissioners on something that is not on the agenda, feel free to do so now. All right, moving on. You'll see the agenda before us, and have you had a chance to review the minutes?
I have.
Did you meet with your agreement? Okay. Fiscal report.
You have the fiscal report in front of you. Approximately between the general fund and the Erie bank account is $900,000. We did have much higher than normal healthcare claims come in this past period. So between that and some upcoming payables, we're going to be, you should later today before you leave, have another TAN request in Pam's office. And we're compared to last year, because that was a question that came up last time as well. We're right in line. Actually, we're ahead by like a week of where we pulled it from last year. So we're still exactly where we were last year at this time in terms of cash flow.
Very good. Any questions for the fiscal director? Good to know. Commissioner Eggleston, would you please read the proclamation on recognizing the staff of Warren County Children and Youth?
Yep. Recognizing the staff of Warren County Children and Youth Services. Whereas the week of June 4th through the 8th, 2018 has been proclaimed as Child Welfare Professionals Appreciation Week by Governor Wolf, recognizing the efforts of child welfare professionals serving the children of Pennsylvania. And every day in Warren County, local children are at risk of child abuse and neglect. Some have been removed from their homes due to such abuse and neglect. We, the Commissioners of Warren County, recognize the risks and need to intervene to protect the children of this county. And the challenging work of investigating child abuse and providing services to families services to assure that the children of Warren County are provided with healthy, nurturing care, support as they transition into adulthood, and needed services in the family to be able to reunify falls to Warren County Children and Youth Services. The work of these dedicated professionals requires them to enter into situations in which their professional safety may be put at risk. Our committed professionals work with children who have been victimized by physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, and other forms of maltreatment. The professionals of Warren County Children and Youth Services must develop great skill in working with families who are in crisis situations, struggling with mental health challenges, suffering from drug and alcohol afflictions, poverty, and other difficult issues. And the professionals of Warren County Children and Youth Services must possess substantial knowledge and skills in a myriad of areas to effectively serve the families of Warren County. The staff of Warren County Children and Youth Services endeavor to protect the children of Warren County, often with long hours, tremendous demands, little appreciation, and great criticism. Many injuries and possibly deaths of children in Warren County have been averted due to the efforts of Warren County Children and Youth Services. Be it resolved, in special recognition of the efforts of Warren County Children and Youth Services, we, the Commissioners of Warren County, do hereby issue this resolution recognizing the staff of Warren County Children and Youth Services for their dedicated efforts in protecting the children of Warren County, adopted this 13th day of June 2018. And a couple of things that I wanted to say in relation to this were I had the fortune of being involved in the QSR review with children and youth, which they were kind of weirded out that there was a commissioner there. I don't think that it happens normally. And basically what that does is you have a sampling of cases from children and youth, and this independent body is supposed to review those cases and then through a scoring system determine the quality of the service being provided and make recommendations and changes. Warren County Children and Youth scored very high across the board and had a very good review of their system, and I was really impressed with the level of professionalism in those reviews. It was really great to have a deep dive to see what all of the different challenges that are involved with these cases, which are on the one hand incredibly heartbreaking, so many of them, and on the other hand where you see situations that actually get better, and it's one of those things that I don't think as a community we do enough to discuss the victories in these stories. They just kind of, everything, the ship gets righted and then the family kind of moves on and then that's it. When something goes wrong, we focus on it a great deal, but we don't discuss, I think, enough the victories. And a good example is a couple of years ago we did ride-alongs with children and youth workers, and in all different departments and areas. And I was fortunate enough to go to a foster family who was taking care of a kid at the time, and the child was not theirs, they were fostering it, and they were talking at the time about how they were really wish they could adopt this child and that they could take care of it, and they talked a little bit about the challenges that the child had at home and everything else, and it was another one of those situations that was really heartbreaking. And a year and a half later, I randomly ran into this person at the store, and I didn't recognize him at first, and they were so ecstatic. They told me that they were able to adopt the child and take care of it. And if you saw this kid, that level of energy, excitement, good nature that child had, I just pictured it growing up in a loving home where the child was appreciated and cared for, and have a real shot at a good life, And I think that was another one of those moments where I thought about how important this work is, and how it's real easy to get caught up in all of the difficult stuff and not focus on the real positive stuff. These people work in challenging situations, and in some cases produce miracles with the work that they do. And so I'm very grateful for the work that they do. And just one last thing I'll say is on the way home from the One Children and Youth visit, we drove past my parents' house, and I was riding along, and I rolled the window down. And I said, thank you. I said, thank you so much, because there was not a whole lot of difference between me and the child that we met on that call. And all it would take is, I just could imagine being in a different circumstance, my life turning out completely different than it did. So thank you to Children and Youth Services. They do a phenomenal job.
Commissioner Morrison, do you have anything to add? Out of deference to Meredith, do you want to add anything from Children and Youth?
Just that we appreciate the fact that they give us a week to recognize all the hard work that we do, and we appreciate the fact that you recognize that what we do is not a simple task, that we do it for the betterment of the community.
Very good. Thank you. At this time, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda, which, by the way, one note, there is old business. It's technically the Motorola financing agreement, but I wanted to deal with it last, so I put it at the end. And then the minutes, which, to note, also includes the minutes from the executive session, which we took in the middle of our meeting, as well as the fiscal report as presented and the proclamation. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Any public comment? All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. First thing on the agenda is the appointment of fire chaplain. You'll see I just inserted a letter Pursuant to Resolution 3109 of 2018, commissioning the Warren County Office of Emergency Services Chaplaincy within the Department of Public Safety, the county appointed Daniel Stanley as the first Emergency Services Chaplain, and he's here today with us, and I'd like to swear him in after this vote. And the resolution further authorizes us to appoint additional chaplains. Due to the travel schedules and the size of Warren County, it is my recommendation that we appoint a second chaplain at this time. Remember, this is a volunteer position. Having interviewed and checked the references for Pastor Doug McCracken of the Christian Missionary Alliance of Warren, I wholeheartedly recommend his appointment. I would ask that you vote to commission him today. With that, I'd make a motion to appoint Pastor Douglas McCracken as an emergency services chaplain. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Very good. Thank you very much. Any discussion from the board?
I'd just like to thank Mr. McCracken for volunteering for this. It's a wonderful service to provide to the community, and definitely a group that needs it and can utilize it. So thank you.
Good. Mr. McCracken, did you want to say anything?
It's my privilege to serve. It's my experience to help the community.
Thank you very much. Any public comment? Anything from public safety?
I think it's a wonderful thing that we're able to do this. Wholeheartedly, McCracken. I allowed my son to go to the Dominican Republic and with him when he was 15. So I will wholeheartedly support and all the trust and faith.
Very good. Thank you very much. The motion before us is to appoint Douglas McCracken as a emergency services chaplain for Warren County. All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. This time, if you two would step forward, I'll swear you in. Please raise your right hand. I state your name.
I, Douglas McCracken,
Do solemnly promise
do solemnly promise
to faithfully and diligently perform
to faithfully and diligently perform
the duties of emergency services chaplain of Warren County,
the duties of the Emergency Services Chaplain of Warren County,
and will provide comfort and spiritual support
and will provide comfort and spiritual support
to personnel
of
of emergency service departments
emergency service departments
and to the citizens of the community
and the citizens of the community
as called upon.
as called upon.
I shall strive to set an exemplary standard
I shall strive to set an exemplary standard
of ethical and moral conduct and will provide comfort and spiritual support
and will provide comfort and spiritual support
to all persons without bias.
to all persons without bias.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We appreciate your service. The next item on the agenda is 2 tower leases. This is actually for the same tower site. The tower is split through the middle, split right on the line. And I'd like to ask Todd Lake to explain the tower lease before us.
Up on top of Stone Hill, top of Brown Run, we have a tower up there that's been in service since Sheriff Claycamp was in the 911 position. And somehow over the years, the lease got lost. Whether it was ever officially executed, I mean, the tower's been there since the 80s, Sheriff. They're since the late 80s, so with Brian Bull's assistance and help, we determined that the tower is on one piece of land. 2 of the guy wires are on the one piece of land. One guy wire is on the same piece of land as the tower. And the property line goes dead down the middle of the building. And it just happened to be that's where it got put back then, back in the days of the, hey, okay, let's do this, handshake. So we've gone to Cameron Energy and Mr. Streich, and even with our radio project that we're moving forward with, this tower site is going to be a backup site. This covers the entire city of Warren. So even with the project, this will probably be a site that we'll be keeping up and running for probably forever. It's a good site. It's, like I said, it's an excellent backup site where we keep amateur radio, and the Transit Authority has stuff there and things like that. It'll be minimal cost. I think the lease agreements are $100 a year per person. It's budgeted. That's a budgeted line item for 2018. So, like I said, it's the costs of keeping the tower are extremely minimal.
Very good. Any questions for Mr. Lake? Very good. Then I'd entertain a motion. Actually, just approve both the Cameron Energy Agreement and the agreement with Stephen Streich.
So moved.
Second that?
Any discussion? Public comment? For my part, I want to thank Todd and Attorney Shreve for spearheading this. It's one of those liabilities. It's not really something that we're too worried about, but let's just get our ducks in the row and everything. Yes. Yeah, I know. We identified this in like the first week in office that we wanted to do this. So just shoring things up, making sure that liability is covered. Any other comments? The motion before us is to approve 2 lease agreements for the tower sites, one with Cameron Energy, one with Stephen Streich, both for $100 a year. All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Next is the award of a gutter project to the public safety. Basically, we don't need to vote on this, I don't believe. Commissioner Egglestone's already signed off on it. Basically, all-weather seamless gutter applied or bid in on a job to put in some heated gutters at the Public Safety Office. It's being paid for through a P Corp or P Comp grant, I forget which. He was the lowest bid, but we weren't able to have more than 2 signatures on it because Commissioner Morrison and I both said that we had a conflict of interest. Consulting the law, since it is the lowest bid, after all, I don't have a problem with going ahead and signing it, but the law says very clearly that I'll need to state the reason. It's simply this: I own the majority of a company, Gafferland Strategies, which is a client, and All-Weather Seamless Gutters is a client of that company. So I personally don't see any money from it, but that's the conflict of interest. I will not be... I'm happy to go ahead and approve this just because it is the lowest bid. It's not like I'm doing anyone a favor. Commissioner Morrison, did you...
My conflict of interest is just that he's a very good friend of my family.
Okay, that being stated in public record, we'll go ahead and sign off on the... And just for everyone's interest, the total quote was $10,500 for labor and everything. Next on the agenda is the appointment to Warren County Housing Authority Board. Do one of you sit on that? Do you sit on that? Okay. On behalf of the Board of Commissioners of the Housing Authority of the County of Warren, I respectfully request that you appoint Mrs. Patricia Miller to the Housing Authority Board. Mrs. Miller has been a member of the Warren community for over 30 years and has extensive experience in areas that would support the authority very well. We would like Mrs. Miller's appointment to be effective immediately and for 2 years from that date. Signed, Tanya Mitchell-Weston, CEO. Do I hear such motion?
I move to approve her appointment.
I will second that.
Comments from the commissioners? Public comment? All those in favor of the motion to appoint Mrs. Patricia Miller to the Housing Authority Board, please state aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Repository bids. Did you want to say anything? All right. Yep, standard repository bid as they usually come before us. We have 3 before us today. Parcel number Whiskey November 8178876 in Pleasant Township. It's a mobile home currently owned by Mary Kay's, bid on by Geothermal Homes for $250. Again, Whiskey November 488-463-208 in Conowongo Township, another mobile home. This one currently owned by Jared Button. Bidder was Charles DeHardy for $250. And then the third one is Whiskey November 81877-900 in Pleasant Township. It is a tower for professional communications, bid on by JT Wilco Holdings, and that bid was for $560. So your motion to approve these 3 bids?
So moved.
I'll second.
Discussion? Public comment? All those in favor of the 3 bids, please state aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Right-of-way agreement. I do not have a lot of details on this project, and Dan Glotz was not able to join us today, but we're all well aware that the county has the bike trail going along 62, and it stops north of the city line, and I believe we're trying an effort to revitalize and expand that project further, I believe all the way up to the mall, correct?
Beyond.
Beyond the mall.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the properties that we need a right-of-way agreement with in order to do that is Robert Eakey. And so we have before us a right-of-way agreement for $1 with Robert Eakey. Are there any questions?
There's also another one with Barbecue.
Oh, thank you for pointing that out. Yes. Also one with Robert Eakey and Kimberly Eakey Roth.
Acting on behalf of Barbecue.
Understood. Thank you. Anything more in terms of clarification? Questions?
Just that this is something that Dan's been working on, Dan Glotz has been working on for quite a while, and the original intent of the bike trail was to get it up to the New York line and have it connect so that you'd have a long transitional bike trail. Dan's tried to get this particular agreement for quite a while, so I think this is, my hope is that that once this is done, that there'll be a lot of progress on his part to expand that bike trail, which I think everybody really loves that trail, and it'll get even more use.
Yep, very good. Do I hear a motion to approve the 2 agreements?
So moved.
I'll second.
Discussion from the commissioners? Any public comment? Mr. Gully.
How are you going to get around the mall on this path, bike path?
I don't know. You'd have to talk to Dan Glotz.
Residents along 62 to say like the school district and the auto department, the cemetery.
From the conversations that I've had with Dan, the businesses in front of the mall and the mall itself, they're all very interested in the bike trail. Naturally, the more traffic through their space, the better.
Will you be widening the berm so that people can ride in a more safer condition?
I think that, I can't say for certain. Obviously, Dan's working on it with those businesses, but it'll probably weave through that space. And then the same token, I don't think it's going to run along 62. It's probably might even run along
the railroad grade.
Yeah.
It's a Rails to Trails project. Yeah.
So, yeah.
But for more details, you really should talk to Dan Glotz about it.
Yes.
Either way, I don't think there's anything holding us back except the risk of losing $1 on approving the right-of-way agreements today. Any further questions? All those in favor of the 2 right-of-way agreements, please state aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Next on the agreement is the Motorola financing agreement. Do you have copies of that? By way of introduction, we talked about this at length last time for 2.5 hours at our last meeting, or at least it made the meeting go 2.5 hours. And so we're not going to rehash, at least at this time, all the pros and cons, the benefits, and the opportunity, the history, that sort of thing. But suffice to say that we passed the CSSA agreement at the last meeting, but we did not approve the financing and instead voted to table it until this meeting. So at this time, the project is basically stalled because it cannot be executed until we have a financing package in place. Since the last meeting, the commissioners have had the opportunity to dialogue more with Motorola and consult the solicitor and talk with our public safety director, as well as try to find other options. And at this time, I would ask Mr. Ventura from Motorola to present the current lease option.
So it's great. Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to come back here today to work with the county on this critical project for public safety. So as a follow-up to what the commissioner said, the last meeting we were able to move forward with this CSSA, but the financing had been tabled. We had been asked to extend the validity of the leasing agreement that was on the table for the last meeting to align with today's meeting. In addition, to look at the interest rates that we were able to provide. So in doing so, we worked with our Motorola Credit Corporation, who works with our public vendors to facilitate this municipal leasing. We were able to reduce the rate and extend the validity for today's vote. A couple other important things regarding the lease agreement that is in front of us today. The payment is deferred for 15 months, so the first payment would not be due until August of 2019, and at that point, a 10-year term would begin. So there's no prepayment penalty that is applied to the lease that is up for vote today. So if the county were to find another source of funding to satisfy that lease, there is no payment, there's no penalty. We're paying it off before the term matures. The only other thing related to that would be, this is viewed as a budgeted expense of your line items versus your regular expenses from a county perspective, and not as a debt to the county. So it kind of works out in the favor of the county from that perspective. So again, appreciate the opportunity to work with the county on this critical project, and I'll hand it over back to you.
Yeah, I'd like to ask Director Lake to say a few words as well on the financing, and then open it up to the board for questions of the presenters.
Fortunately, over the last couple of weeks, after we finally got our final figure, we've applied for a USDA grant that we're quite confident is going to come through of about $150,000. Ken, of course, worked diligently in an MSOP funding. That's the Emergency Medical Services. I don't know what OP stands for. It's a fund that's paid when people fines. If somebody gets speeding tickets, there's all the line items on there. One of the line items is emergency medical services. Because this is an interoperability thing, we got about $18,000 from that. And I had the great fortune. I sit on as the president of the Keystone Emergency Management Association. I sit on the State 911 Advisory Board. And we were reviewing the funding, our 2018 statewide interconnectivity grant program, our funding priorities. And on Thursday of last week, it was approved that one of the funding priorities be a PSAP, which is Public Safety Answering Point, abbreviating. The Radio Council enhancements for a shared master site, an all-in approach, which is us, all in, with a county partnership with StarNet. So I asked Motorola and Mr. Howell and Mr. Ventura got me the numbers. We are looking at that coming out of 15% 911 money that will pay for our equipment in the 911 center, pay for the the engineering, installation, all of that stuff in the councils, the stuff that will be in the 911 center to pay for all of that. So we're looking at a figure of about $450,000. So that will not be a county incurred expense. I can't guarantee that with 100%, 100%, because it's lower on the funding priority, but last year, all the money wasn't spent. 2017 wasn't spent, and then it got divided up amongst the counties under the 83% formula. And we ended up as Warren County getting about $40,000. So we're going to make out a little bit better. And speaking with the Deputy Director for 911, I said, well, where did this come from? And he goes, I put that in for Warren County. So 2018 is for us. So 2019, I talked to the guys, they've already had 3 or 4 other counties are starting to talk about this. So I think next year it might not be as lucrative next year. They may be paying for half of something, come next year. So I'm very proud and very glad that this is the year that this can happen. So between those things, that's about $618,000 off of that, pretty close to 1.9 million. So that drops us down to like the 1.3 million. I mean, that's almost 3 years worth of payments. So
If I could summarize all that, then Commissioner Morrison was concerned about the engineering costs.
Yes.
So the state is now, if we get this, the state would pay for all of that.
all of that, that's all part of.
Yeah, and Commissioner Eggleston's concern had to do with the interest rate, and that has also come down and is within 0.15% of the initial USDA offer. And again, you're offering 14, 15 months, no interest, no penalty for switching to another financing option.
And in this time frame, that 450,000 and 150,000 would come to us.
So now we've got which was like a $7-8 million project, went down to a 1.8, and is now, with grant funding and such, down to 1.2, 1.3. Fantastic. Good work, guys. Any questions for the presenters?
I want to make a comment. Although we do have the $60,000 a year that we would be paying, which is our annual fee, and then we do have the interest on the loan. So 1.8, now 1.2, still we have those other costs.
With this being a regional project now, and on the regional funding priorities, we can ask for the maintenance of our 911 councils be out of the 15% money. It wouldn't be that whole 60,000, but I would say it would probably be closer in the 40 million. So we would probably be paying like about 20,000, which that's pretty close to what we're paying now.
Wow.
I mean, I got to talk about that. I just got a bill for that.
That's good to hear.
So that drops us way down to, that drops us. Thank you for bringing that up. That is part of this. The 15% money would be the maintenance going into the future of that.
Okay.
Other questions from the board?
Question. Interest rate?
It's 3.99.
Okay. And it was 4.1?
Or 4.15.
5 was 5.
Sorry, I don't have the previous ones from me.
It was 4.15,
Yeah, that was
I'm
it.
pretty sure.
Other questions from the board?
I just have a few comments. Some of them are redundant based on our previous meeting, and then some of them are new. So the first thing is I just want to highlight a few points that I think that are important for me and for everybody to remember as a part of this. The first is that Erie County has previously done a similar deal, and they're in the process of replacing their radio equipment. That deal for the 300,000 residents of Erie County will cost them approximately $76 a person, or $75, I can't remember which. For Warren County, for this deal, thanks to the work of Commissioner Cafferlin, Todd Lake, and everybody that's been involved in it, Warren County will potentially pay roughly $45 per person to get to get better equipment and better service, because it's more tied in with the state police network.
And that was before the grants.
And that's without factoring in the grants. That's just the bottom line cost. So that's one item. Second thing is that in the article after the last meeting, and this is, I understand the question that was raised. It was how do we pay for it? And I felt like that kind of made it sound like there's no money available, or we're just signing an agreement without having any source of funding, or that it's just like we got to get the radios and that's, we have to get this system in place. And I just wanted to make it clear that I think that there are multiple funding streams that can be utilized for this radio project within the county, and that it like I had talked to people who are concerned that this is going to require a tax increase or something of that nature. I don't believe that to be true. That's why I'm supporting it. I think that Now, obviously, we're not in budget season yet, but we have a lot of things that we're doing as a cost savings measures within the county currently, both in healthcare and other places, and then also various financial changes that'll come about due to situations with our bond debt and other programs. I think that the county can shoulder the burden of this financially, and that there are a lot of opportunities to fund this and to move forward with it. So I don't think it's something, it's not hard to get kind of hung up on a price tag because the county doesn't make that many big purchases anymore. And the last major one would have been the addition to the courthouse, and I have a feeling that this will be far more popular than that was. And frankly, it'll be incredibly useful, just for a number of different reasons. So I just wanted to clarify those two things, and then I just wanted to highlight again a couple more points of why I support this. So one is the deferred payment element of this. In saying how we will pay for it, the discussion that happened last time wasn't about where the source of funding will be, but what we are going to pay. That's where the interest, or the concern over the interest rate and some of the other things, because when that affects the long-term, all of these tertiary costs related to financing something along these lines, with no penalty on early payment or anything else. There are plenty of things that the county can do, not only grant-wise, financing-wise, and other things over the course of the next year in order to continuously reduce the cost of this project. I see that as a huge advantage, because rather than having to make a decision and being locked into it over a long period of time, we have a lot of time that we can do, and there are other grants and other funding opportunities in order to take care of the cost of this project. As far as the project itself, there are two major points that I think are important to consider. One is the connectivity for all services, including the state police. I can't tell you how apparent it was in talking with first responders and people in law enforcement how the clear upgrade that this is going to make as far as their ability to respond quicker to issues within the county related to emergency management. Our system is antiquated, and that's putting it probably nicely. This is state-of-the-art, and in this case, especially with this, Warren County will be leading the state of Pennsylvania in its ability to respond to emergencies. And in a rural community, that's incredibly important, where everybody isn't consolidated in one space. And the final point is just the issue of greater coverage. I really think that that's a huge issue, in my opinion. Having lived in Sheffield for a period of time and seeing the challenges that lack of connectivity produces, and personally driving people from the forest into town when their vehicles broke down or there was an emergency out in the woods, I can tell you that the coverage is important. It's really important out, especially out in the forest, and those situations were in some cases minor. I had one situation where there were two Asian students from Penn State who came up and drove probably a little bit too fast on one of the back roads and almost flipped their vehicle. And then I caught them walking down the road and drove them into town. They could barely speak English. And I thought to myself, what would have happened if they had a major accident out there? No cell coverage, nothing, And that's just one instance. My situation is like you get out there where there's a major incident, and I keep going back to the Minister Creek accident where you had trees fall on people and you had major loss of life and other things. I couldn't imagine if sitting here trying to make this decision, if this equipment couldn't have made somebody respond a little bit quicker and save somebody's life, what that's worth to the community. So 99% coverage within the county, whereas currently we have 80 maybe, and it depends on where you're at, what that 80 really represents. So those are my reasons for supporting it. I think that this is a great opportunity, and I'm really excited to see it come to fruition and see how the emergency management folks function after it's implemented. So,
can I take that as a motion to approve the financing agreement with Motorola?
I'll make a motion to approve the financing agreement as presented.
I second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any more comments from the commissioners?
We passed the agreement. We have to finance it. Here it is. How much else you can say? We have to pay for it somehow. So.
Very good. Thank you. Commissioner Eggleston, anything more?
The only thing I would say is the agreement that we passed was the fee schedule, which was basically an agreement on how the implementation would happen and what the cost of the equipment was. The financing agreement is actually what equipment we're getting. Like, so just to clarify what the difference is, why there were two agreements, and why the perceived holdup is you got to tell everybody what you're going to buy once you decide on what the price is. So.
All right. Thank you for the clarity. Anything from the Public Safety Department?
Moving forward.
The only thing I'll say finally is again to thank Commissioner Chaplain for his work on this, and Director Lake and Ken McCorson. I think that this is one of those things that for me being a layperson, it's hard to kind of understand how this is all implemented, because I'm not a first responder. You know, I trust the judgment and discussion of people in that community, but this is groundbreaking from my perspective. I think this is a precedent-setting, technological, top-tier project that's going to put Warren County ahead of everybody else, and everybody's going to be chasing Warren County for this same level of technology going forward. And you know, I can't remember the last time I could say Warren County was number one in technology in an area. So this is a huge, to me, it's a bigger deal than I think people realize, and even I realize sometimes. And I just want to thank Commissioner Chaplain and Todd and Ken and everybody that worked on it so hard over the past year in order to make it a reality. I think that the reduced costs were millions of dollars in savings. Figured out a way to get everybody on board with it. I'm just really proud of them for their work.
Thank you.
And a thank you really does go out to the guys from Motorola. Yes,
Absolutely.
that's their job, and they are going to make money on this. There's no doubt about it. But I know that we're the poster child. We're getting a little better deal than the next place down the road. So don't put that in the picture.
Just for clarity, you can't say that. How many times
I know. We don't want Clarity County mad at us.
Between this project and Erie, the one that went on in Erie.
We were not the vendor of selection.
Okay. All right.
We were the vendor of selection. The majority of the state is the statewide project, but we're not the vendor in Erie.
Okay.
But I would like to kind of just pile on to what Director Lake said. We appreciate the opportunity to work with the county. We really do. I agree with everything that Commissioner Eggleston has stated, that this is a groundbreaking step. I believe that this would be the first of many for a lot of counties in Pennsylvania to be able to take advantage of technology like this and support their first responders at a discounted rate. So I appreciate the opportunity. We look forward to implementing a successful project here to protect the public.
And a big kudos to the state radio office. Director Barnum and Major Stackhouse really want this to happen too, because they need to show the legislators that they're playing well in the sandbox. It's not just the state sandbox. It's the state's sandbox, not just the state's sandbox. It's everybody's sandbox. They're playing well with others, and they have the legislators that. It wouldn't be pretty if Commissioner Chaplain and I went down there and sat in front of the Senate committee again and said that they're not playing well with us. It wouldn't be good. So, but they're going above and beyond. Director Barnum is a great guy. He spoke here 2 weeks ago, and then Major Stackhouse. She's toting the line. Whole system. I guess we'll put it that way, right? She's holding the line, so thank you very much.
Other public comments? Mr. Scully?
Commissioner Morrison brought up the thing. The county executive in Erie, when they revamped their 911 center, got a tremendous amount of money from the government. Now, has our representatives in the Senate and the House and your lobbyist group in Harrisburg made any effort to get Governor Wolf to give Warren County a fairly good deal like he gave Erie County for their new 911 center? And has he been approached?
Mr. Scully.
Because he gave tremendous amount of money to Erie, and I haven't seen him give any more to any other counties pertaining to 911 center. I think you did an excellent job on this, Ben. And you keep mentioning places you can't hear, be spoken to on the radio. I challenge anybody to go to TDU, find the road Trunkyville, and go down to the bottom and have an accident with a line truck. And one individual, being me, had to climb all the way to Trunkyville so that I could call for assistance for who got injured on the job. It's very important. It's scary when you have a misfortune with utility lines and that, and the only way you can get help is somebody's got trucked up that Trunkyville, and I believe it was 2 miles up from the bottom. I'm not sure. But it's about time, and I highly compliment you, Ben, for the effort you made. But I think Governor Wolf's got to also consider Warren County. If he can give all kind of money to Erie County for their 911 center, and I haven't heard anybody mention the governor gave anything to you.
But to be clear, the Pennsylvania State Police are directly under the governor, so I am one of the first people to bash the state about giving us unfunded mandates and not giving us enough money. I think I can honestly say that the state has done their part in this project.
All right. And again, I compliment you on your efforts, and Todd and Kelly.
Yeah, this 50%
Thank you.
And just to go back to the deferred billing element of this, I think that my point is that there's a lot of room to have discussions with the governor's office and others still in order to help
Sure.
move forward with funding that, especially if it's going to be a model for the rest of the state.
The state's allowing us to use their system. It's a huge savings to us.
I realize it. But I still haven't heard how much the government gave you.
Could you put a cost to that, roughly? I mean, we're talking millions.
I'm asking Todd Lake, what would be a good grant from Governor Wolf
But
pertaining equally Erie? Your system's going to be as good as Erie. It's supposed to be the prime of the state.
Well, I'd be curious as to what money Erie got from the governor. I'd like to hear.
And I'd advise you to call the county executive.
Yeah,
That was through, I think most of the money they got was through the gambling process.
Yep, exactly.
Please.
Unless you're talking about literally the build of the 911 center, which is not what we're doing here. We're replacing the radio system. They rebuilt a whole new public safety department.
They built a new building in garages.
Right. So that's
It's my gambling money.
right, different.
But still, you could approach the governor. Maybe he can help you buy your equipment.
They were going to get it in.
We'll make sure we approach the governor, Joe.
I will check.
And Mr. Scully, as COG legislative representative, maybe you could approach the governor about us getting some of the gambling money, since all of that
You
sticks
grant
around.
county commissioners gambling, which I'm sure in Warren County, rather than go to up to New York State, they would enjoy it.
No. So the money is currently staying in Erie County. They can keep their gambling. We just want their money.
Oh, yeah, they have the money. That's what you're confused about.
No. Our citizens are going to Erie County and leaving the money there.
They're also going to New York State and leaving it there.
All right.
Point of
Anyway,
order, I'd like to call the question. If there's no further discussion.
I have a couple quick comments. I will not belabor all the pros and cons. Again, we are going to be rolling this out over the course of the next 6 months, and we will be having ample opportunity to talk to the public through the press at several other events. You will be hearing a lot about this project. So I simply want to summarize it all by saying that I'm so heartened to see the community and the commissioners' support for emergency personnel in this county. I can tell you that people have been awed when they come up to me and said, "You're serious? A fireman can't talk to a police officer over the radio system?" People don't know that, and it is odd. This is going to fix that. This is going to fix our coverage gaps. It's going to allow us to fix the system on our own terms rather than waiting for it to continue to die. And the unprecedented collaboration with the state. I am so thrilled to be involved in a project with StarNet because no one else has done this, and we are leading the charge. There are a few expenditures I can think of that the county could spend money on that impacts all residents of the county like this. With that, the motion before us is to approve the financing agreement with Motorola. All those in favor, please state aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, briefly, we need to go over a personnel report, and then we'll adjourn. Since our last meeting, new hires for the county include Eric Melquist in Human Services as a Social Services Aide, Caitlin Hasey in Domestic Relations, a Customer Service Clerk, Rita Hawk, Deer License Processor, Lee Fellman, Deer License Processor, Teresa Richard, Deer License Processor, and Morgan Shapani, Deer License Processor. There have been a few changes. Josh Fedorowski in the Sheriff's Department has gone from part-time to full-time. Tyler Wagner has also gone from part-time to full-time, I believe. Crystal Ingersoll, part-time corrections officer to full-time corrections officer. Tim Thomas, full-time Sheriff's Deputy to part-time Sheriff's Deputy. And William Nobles, a 911 dispatcher, went from full-time to part-time. Any questions? Did I hear a motion to Oh, yes, sir.
Just for clarification, Tyler Wagner is temporary full-time.
Oh, right.
Randy Dicker has had surgery, or is having surgery on his knee, and he will be gone for about 2 months. Tyler will be taking his slot temporarily.
Okay. Thank you very much for the clarification. Do I hear a motion to ratify the personnel transaction report?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Any other comments, or do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.